Well, I heard that y'all were having a really good presenter tonight, so I was really looking forward to coming over here. When I got here, I found out it was me. So I'm afraid I might go home disappointed. I hope you don't. My name is Al, or Alan Money, M-O-N-E-Y, and I'm a wood turner. And if that sounds a little bit like maybe what you would hear at a support group for an addiction place, then I guess I'll have to plead guilty, because I've been addicted to woodworking pretty much all my life. Now I say that to say this: I'm no expert. Many of you probably know a lot more about wood turning than I'll ever know. You probably know a lot more about segmented wood turning than I'll ever know. But hopefully we can learn a little bit from each other tonight, and I can show you the way I do it, and then maybe we can have some discussion. I do have a lot of material to present. Some of it I'm going to go through really quick, because if I don't, we might be here for a good while. So, what is segmented turning? How many folks out here have done segmented turning before? Okay, about half of you. Okay, basically what we're doing is taking strips of wood, and we're going to cut. I have to watch my feet over here. We're going to cut these trapezoid blocks. This is a better one. We're going to cut these strips of wood into these trapezoid blocks.
Set it on the table.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you'll have to keep reminding me of that. I'm sorry. And I'll probably move around quite a bit too, Mr. Cameraman.
Okay. Well,
I'm not used to.
We've got a rule that goes along with that if you wave it around 3 times, you get to run the camera at the next session.
Get my hand slapped?
No, you get to run the camera at the next session.
Okay. Then what we do is, with the trapezoid blocks, is take those and re-glue them into a ring. Now, then we stack the rings together, and we call the rings layers at that point. And then the assembled stack is then glued together and then turned on the lathe. Now, why segments? Well, segmenting allows us to use different kinds and types of wood together. Can greatly increase the interest of a turned piece. Segmenting allows you to develop endless numbers of patterns and designs, and you're not limited to only the size of wood that's available down at the local lumber dealer. Segmented turning is not new. My grandfather was doing segmented turning back in the mid-60s. He didn't know that's what he was doing. He just knew that he needed a piece of wood, a piece of cherry, about 2 inches thick and 12 inches across, to make as a base for a floor lamp. Well, he knew he couldn't find something like that down at the lumber yard. So he took the biggest piece he could and then figured out to cut it in pie-shaped wedges. And then he developed his a clamp to glue all that and then clamp it together. So it's not new. It's been around for a while, and I don't know exactly how long. I talk a lot to artist groups, and try to explain to them what turning is, and segmented turning in particular. But artist groups are very concerned with things like proportion, balance, color, contrast, texture. And as wood turners, we probably ought to be a little bit concerned with those items too, because while these aren't really rules, they're guidelines. And the closer we follow some of those guidelines, the more appealing our product is going to be to the majority of people. Proportion, golden ratio, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, or rule of 1/3, just simply has to do with how tall the project is versus how wide it is. Balance. When we talk about balance, we're talking about the foot. The foot should be about 1/3 the diameter, or 1/3 of the distance of the greatest diameter. And I've got a couple of examples here. I didn't turn these two. Sharp lines or straight lines? Well, most people find straight lines not so appealing. They'd rather see nice curved, gentle, sloping curves. Color. We can dye wood just about any color under the rainbow. And sometimes we use color just to emphasize grain, that type of thing. But artists have their color palette, woodturners have theirs. I had a lady come up to me at a show not long ago and said, I never realized, and we were talking about a piece of Purple Heart, and she said, I never realized you could get purple wood. She said, I just thought all wood was brown. Well, yeah, a majority of it is, but there are other colors of wood that you can use as well. Contrast, and of course we know there's contrast like in zebra wood between summer wood and spring wood. Contrast in maple, bird's eye, flame maple, that type of thing. And then of course contrast in box elder, contrast in spalted wood. Texture, either applied mechanically or just texture that occurs naturally in the piece of wood. Now, let's talk a little bit about designing. Again, I'm going to move through this pretty quick. I like to start with just a piece of graph paper. And again, I'm going to use my 8-inch wide, 5-inch high, because that kind of goes back with my golden ratio. And the next thing I'll do, once I get that blocked out on my graph paper, and I've got some examples over there if you want to go by later on and take a look, then I'll sketch out my side profile. I'll go ahead and establish my foot, establish my rim, and then kind of make my nice gentle curves between those. Again, if we look at design principles, the point of greatest diameter should be about 1/3 from the top or 1/3 up from the bottom. Mine's not quite that. I cheated maybe a little bit. Again, those are not rules, they're just guidelines. Then we have to talk about, well, how many rings is it going to take? How many layers of wood is it going to take to make that 5-inch high block so I can turn it? So I've sort of determined already that most of my wood's 3/4 of an inch thick, although I'm going to have some pieces that are only 1/8, and another piece, my feature ring, ring number 3, that's going to be 1 inch.
So you get to wide, different widths, thicknesses?
Just for design, I don't. It could all be the same.
Oh,
I mean, there's no rule that says that they have to be
you're
different.
doing that because the thin or contrasting colors?
Yes.
If that's what I get, okay, thank you.
Yes. Now the next thing, we don't have a laser pointer, do we?
Yep.
If I could borrow one for a minute. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, I'm going to block in the left and the right edges. Oh, thank you. I'm going to block in the left and the right edges. And what I'm doing here is I'm coming just a little bit beyond the area of my profile here. So you can see in layer 8, I'm coming out about, 1/8 of an inch or so beyond the profile, and then I'm extending, and you've got to kind of look down here, I'm extending about 1/8 of an inch beyond the inside of the profile here. So I'm going to go ahead and block those in, so essentially I've got a cross-section view now of the segments that it's going to take. And next I'm just going to add some dimensions in there. That's mostly for me. Now, I've also added a center line, okay? That'll be important in the next slide, because what I'm going to do is take a measurement now from that center line over here to the right side, or the outermost side of layer 1. Now let me explain a little bit before I go on. Layer 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all have the same outside diameter. Okay, they're the same measurement. I cheated a little bit, and you notice that layer 2, 3, and 4, they're not quite as wide as layer 1 is, but it's only about, I don't know, a 1/16 of an inch difference. So I'm going to cheat just a little bit and say, okay, this distance right here is the same as this distance up here. It's just going to help me out a little bit if I do that. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking this distance from here to here. I'm going to use that as a radius then to draw a circle on a different piece of graph paper. Now that circle then will become the outside edge of my bowl. I've already predetermined in my mind that each layer is going to require, do I need to put this back down? Each layer is going to require 12 of those segments. Okay? So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to divide this circle into 12 equal parts. Now, back to my drawing here. Now I'm going to take this measurement, which is my inside diameter for layer 1, and I'm going to come up to, it really doesn't matter which one of these segments you use, or these pie-shaped wedges that you use, because they're all the same. I'm just going to pick one right here and strike an arc that has this radius. And that then becomes inside diameter for layer 1. Okay? Have I lost anybody completely yet? Okay.
Inside diameter is measured from the side of what, the plan side of the bowl or the plan side of the wood that you're gluing together? Plan side of the wood. Plan side of the wood, okay.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for layer 2. And here's where cheating just a little bit helps me, because we're only talking about basically 1/16 of an inch difference here. So when I come over and I draw this arc for layer 2, well, it's just going to help if they line up a little bit. Layer 3, again, cheating just a little bit and say, okay, let's make this the same width as this up here. And then set my compass to this distance, come over, and in this little pie-shaped wedge number 3, we're going to draw an arc that will represent the inside diameter of this segment.
And right now they're all the same.
Right now they're all the same. All right, layer 4, basically the same thing. We come down, we drop down to a new pie-shaped wedge here on my drawing, and we set the compass again, and then we simply draw that arc. Now, layer 5 is where it starts changing up a little bit. Layer 5 still has the same outside diameter, but this time the inside diameter has changed a little bit. That's because now we're getting to the point where the bowl is starting to slope inward toward the bottom. So now I'm going to take this distance, use that as my radius, and strike an arc in this pie-shaped wedge number 5. Okay? Layer 6 changes a little bit more. Now we're dealing with a different outside diameter. So I'm going to set my compass at the radius, or at this distance, and use that as the radius for drawing this arc in pie-shaped wedge number 6. Now on number 6, I go and get my inside diameter, come back and strike this arc to represent or to show the position of the inside diameter of layer 6. Layer 7, another change, okay, but the same process. Here I'm getting my outside diameter, and over here I'm going to pie-shaped wedge number 7, and I'm drawing that outside diameter line or arc. And now I'm going to get the inside diameter measurement, come over and strike this arc to give my inside diameter of layer 7. Same thing with layer 8. Okay, same thing with layer 8. Here I'm getting the inside diameter for layer 8. And then layer 9. Layer 9 is not going to be a segmented piece. It'll just be one solid piece of wood. Okay? Now, I can develop a cutting list. There are really two measurements that are critical to this whole process. One is the edge length, and the other is the board width. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back up to pie-shaped wedge number 1. This is where I struck my arcs, and I'm going to construct first a line that connects the end point of this arc and the intersection of this line to the end point of this arc where it intersects with this line. Okay? Next, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to draw a line that's tangent to the outside of this circle. Okay? Now that's going to give me 2 lines on there. I'm going to go to number 2 down here, do the exact same thing, connecting endpoints and drawing the tangent line. Again, layer 3 and layer 4 are the same measurement as 1 and 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw those in so you can see them. Layer 5 still has the same outside diameter, but the inside has changed a little bit. So again, I'm doing the same process. I just moved in a little bit here. Okay, layer 6. Basically, the outside diameter's changed, the inside diameter's changed, but this process remains the same, connecting endpoint to endpoint and connecting the tangent line. All right, same thing for layer 7, same thing for layer 8. And of course, layer 9, as I've already said, will just be a disc, one solid disc. Now I can go back and actually get some measurements. So what I'm going to do is take my ruler and I'm going to measure this distance on layer 1. Okay? The distance from this point to this point. And it looks like it's 2 3/16 here, but actually when I moved my scale down and actually got it on right on the end point, it actually comes out to 2 1/8. And now I can start developing a cutting list. I know that now that this distance is 2 1/8 inches. All right? I know that that piece of wood is 1/4 inch thick. It's maple. That edge length is 2 1/8. Now I can go back and get my board width. Now the board width is the distance from this edge over to this edge. Okay? And you have to be careful how you measure. If you measure it on the diagonal here, you're going to get a false reading. Okay? So you've got to measure it on a right angle going across here. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm getting my width, my board width for segment 1. Looks like it's about 3/4 of an inch. So then I'm going to go back to my cutting list and enter in my board width. 3/4 of an inch. Now, like I said, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all the same, so I don't have to make any other measurements on those. I know what they're going to be simply by measuring the first one. But I'm going to go to layer 5 now because that's where it changes up a little bit. And you notice on layer 5, now my board width has changed. It was 3/4 for the others, now it's about 15/16. Layer 6 is where the edge length changes, and also the board width changes. So I get those measurements, and then I record those in my cut list as well. So I'm ready. I can take this to the table saw now and begin cutting. Did I lose anybody yet?
A question for
Okay.
you. How critical is it that the board width is, exact? I mean, couldn't it be a little bit wide and you just cut it off?
It wouldn't hurt if it were a little bit wide. Where it's going to hurt the most is if it's too narrow. If it's supposed to be 1 inch wide and you make it 3/4, then there's a chance that on the inside, when you start turning, you're going to see those joints because they're not going to smooth out all the way.
I guess that's the other reason why you want to cut them just enough so you have the best match you can. On
Right. Okay. Let's move right on through this because that again is just measuring these and finish. I just finished filling out 7, 8, and 9 on my cutting list, and I've got my strip. I figured out my strip length just with a calculator. Figured out, to cut say number 8, if the board width is 2, the edge length is 1.5. That means I'm going to cut 12 pieces, 1.5 inches. So my piece of wood's going to have to be at least 18 inches long, 2 inches wide. But I also have to consider that my saw blade's going to eat up some wood, so I have to add my kerf in there. And I like to add a couple of inches just for safety margin. So that's why the strip length over here is there. All right. Now, I've kind of told you a little bit about how I go about the initial stages of getting everything designed. But there are other ways, okay? And there are computer programs that can help you out with that. A lot of people like to use a program called Segmented Project Planner. There are a couple others. I think Woodturning Pro is one. Some people use SketchUp. You can even use AutoCAD to do this. Whether or not that's easier than what I've gone through so far, I don't know. To some degree, it probably is. I'm going to try to show you just a few things with Segmented Project Planner. Segmented Project Planner will give you kind of an area to draw in, and it will allow you to develop a bowl in several different ways. One method is just the quick and dirty method, which says, okay, I'm going to have 12 sides. Each side's going to be 3/4 of an inch. My outside diameter is 8. My wall thickness is going to be 3/8. And boom. And now it's created that layer for us. Okay? And not only does it create the layer, but it also gives us over here the edge length, the board width, or board length, and board width. All right? Now, it also added a second layer. And let me do this, project outline. There we go. It gave me a second layer that's identical to the first. So let's do that again. And now we have 3 layers. And let's do one more. Now we have 4 layers. But basically what we've got is a can. Okay, it has no shape to it. What we can do now is go to View, Layer Tuner, and now we can start adjusting on this a little bit. And excuse me, but I'm going to have to put on my glasses because I can't see this. And I really can't see it with my glasses either because it creates so much glare. But I can use these layer tuners and say, okay, this one, yep, that one, wall thickness 3/8, 3/8, and whoops, wrong one. I meant that to be layer 1. Okay, let's go back and try that again. 3/4. All right. All right, layer 2. Let's make layer 2, let's reduce that down to say 7.5. All right, and we're going to leave the wall thickness at 3/8. And then we're going to go to layer 3. And we're going to change that to, oh, let's see. Let's change that to 6.5. And let's change this to 3/8. And now let's go to layer 4 and we'll kind of close it up a little bit. Let's make layer 4, let's make that about, let's make that layer about 5 inches. All right, so now it's starting to take shape like a bowl, although we have some pinch points here at layer 2, so we're going to have to make some adjustments there. Maybe adjust the wall thickness a little bit. And probably layer 3, adjust the wall thickness there a little bit. And so forth and so on. So you can play with these sliders a little bit here and get, and it's running a little bit slow. It should be a little bit more dynamic than it is. I probably should have restarted it before I came here. But anyway, that kind of gives you an idea of how you can use Segmented Project Planner to simply create. And then when I do OK and close this, then of course over here in this view, then it brings that design over here, and then it populates all my fields here with my edge length, board width, and so forth.
Is that a free program?
No, it's about a, I don't know, Rob, you bought it.
Currently, it's $43 for the DVD in the library, and it goes up to as much as $110 for the option.
Yeah, I think if you get the whole package, it's a little over $100.
110 software, CD, book, and DVD library.
Yeah.
And I only know that because I just looked it up.
Okay. Now, something else that you can also do with it, is they have a feature called Sketchable. In Sketchable, you can start with a design, and the nice thing about Sketchable is you can choose different designs. You can choose hyperbolic, this design, or this design, okay? Which basically just gives a basic outline, kind of a rough guide for you to go by. Now I'm going to do one that I've already created. GWA half circle. Now, I'm going to change my outer diameter to 8. I'm going to change my height to 5. It has 12 sides, so generate project. Okay, and give it a name and save it. And now I can close this. Now when I come up to File and open that project, Okay. Documents. It's somewhere.
Under budgets. Sort by date modified.
Yep.
There it is.
All right. So it populates the fields and it creates the shape based on the fact that I told it what my diameter was going to be and the basic shape, outside shape that I wanted to use. One thing I don't like about this is that it gives you a false reading right off the bat on the board width. Okay, we know that these boards have to be more than 1/4 of an inch. So then you have to go up to calculate, auto bowl, tell it we want to use a 3/8 inch wall thickness, and then calculate. And now it recalculates it and puts in the correct edge length and board width. And you can go back to layer tuner now and fine tune some of these. But you could take this straight to the saw and cut out pieces like this and have a workable bowl. All right, so much for segmented project planner. There are some other nice features about it. It really helps out a lot if you're trying to design, well, if you're trying to do mosaics, feature rings. It has some nice features to help you with that.
Al, I noticed on some of your work up there that you have pieces in between segments. Does that program accommodate for that?
Yes, it does. Segmented project planner does. All right. Now, whichever way I decide to go as far as creating or as far as getting the measurements for my materials, now it's time to actually go down to the shop and start ripping out pieces of wood. Now, I like to go ahead and label mine so that I'll know that this board is cut to the right width for layer 8 and so forth and so on. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and take these strips then to my table saw and start cutting the segments. Now, do you want to follow me over to the saw? I'm not actually going to, I'm not going to turn on the saw and saw stuff. Because one, my sled doesn't fit this saw. At home, I use a Bosch 4100 series saw. I use a Bosch 4100 series saw, and of course it has different guides, miter guide slots, than this saw stock does. That's okay because I'm basically just going to show you what I use. Again, this is a little rough. My cutting sleds I don't make for appearance. I don't really care what they look like, they just have to function well. And this one does pretty well. Basically what I have here are just a way of holding, setting up a stop and holding it in place. And then I have a method for holding my segments down while they're being cut. And then this one over here, generally the piece of wood that I'm cutting would go right here. I can take this off, which I should do now. I would go ahead and trim one edge of my piece of wood so it's not just a straight 90-degree cut anymore. And go ahead and cut my angle on there. And now I'm ready to start sliding it up to hit my stop, engage my hold down, and then I can feed it into the blade. So that's going to cut off my first segment. I'll flip it over and then repeat the process to cut my second segment, and so forth and so on until I have all 12 segments cut out. Okay?
Where do you get your angle for the first one? Yeah. How do you get the angle? You said you cut it off, get it not square, so how do you know,
How do you get your 60-degree angle on that cut?
Oh,
or whatever it is? I mean, I don't know what it,
Okay.
I didn't see that on any of the things, there wasn't any angles.
12 by 15, 12 and the 36 is.
Oh, okay, well, okay. I
all right.
wasn't thinking about that.
Well, let's talk about angles for a second. Since I'm going to be using 12 segments,
I got you.
then each side of the segment has to be cut on a 15-degree angle. Okay? So basically what I've done is I've set this for 15 degrees. Okay? I can use any number of segments, really. I could use 10. I've used 16. I've used 24. I think I even used 36 once. You know. That was enough.
So do you have a sled for each angle, or you adjust?
Actually, this one will do about 4 or 5 different angles, but I have to kind of disassemble it and then move some stuff and then put it all back together again. Just keep in mind, whatever you do, your angles still have to add up to 360. So if you did 10 sides, then you'd have to have an 18-degree angle on one side, 18 degrees on the other. Put them together, you got 36 degrees, 10 pieces, 360. And
Okay, so you, okay, divide by
Because you got on each side.
2. Yeah, well, I was lost for a second.
okay, let me move back over this way.